Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Hi, Kate. Thank you for joining us. Are you still in Maine?
New Hampshire, yep.
New Hampshire, the other Maine.
The other Maine, yep. I'll be here for a while, so I'm getting comfortable.
All right, you look great.
Thanks.
Michaela has joined us. I'm just trying to see who else is. I know went to other parts outside of Boston, Massachusetts, Cambridge areas. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started at exactly 2:05. So if you need a couple of seconds to get adjusted, get Kleenex for your nose, get pen and paper to take lots of notes, go ahead and do so. We get started in a few seconds. And Kaylee, we're going to start recording at 2:05. Hello, everyone. My name is Edie Stringfellow, and I am the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the Massachusetts Biotechnology Council. Thank you for joining us today for MassBio's Make Shift Happen program, where we discuss anything and everything related to equity, diversity, inclusion, and engagement. For this month of October, Make Shift Happen is powered by Ironwood Pharmaceuticals. I cannot thank them enough just for their support, not just for their commitment to ED&I, but everything that they're doing to improve the quality of life for those suffering with gastrointestinal diseases. Before we get started, I would like to go over the ground rules with you. For the first 20 minutes or so, it will be a Q&A session between the guest and we're going to mute your video and your audio, but this is a very interactive program, so do not hesitate to raise your hand or put your questions in the chat section. And then also following those 20 minutes, we're going to open up the mics and video to the audience, and feel free to join in, chime in with your questions. We aim to wrap up around 2:40 with a hard stop at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, let's get started with today's program. As you are aware or not aware, I will make you aware of it now, that 865 women made the difficult decision to leave the economy and set aside their careers to absorb the lack of childcare options related to the pandemic. And 43% of women with children leave the workforce due to the lack of flexibility. When women in STEM lose the battle against balancing career and family, leadership and scientific gains are lost as well. And please keep in mind that the 865,000 is not industry geared only towards life sciences. This is a cumulative number that was put out by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics Department. But it is something that we should be concerned of and aware of, and may be taking place in our industry, and let's do what we can to head things off. Joining me today discussion is Dr. Angeliki Diane Rigos. She is the President, Massachusetts Association Women in Science, and Executive Director of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT Tata Center. Please, Dr. Rigos, please tell us a little about yourself and what it is that you do.
Thank you for having me, Edie. This is a real first for me. I've never actually been on this show before, and it's really fun to be part of it. I guess I'll start from the very beginning. I was actually born in Europe, and I grew up in Africa and the Middle East, and I came to the United States to study at Cornell. And then I spent a year in Paris doing research, and then I came to MIT to get my Ph.D., and I've been in the Boston area ever since. I never did a postdoc after my PhD. I got a job in the real world in industry. And then
Mhm.
after a few years, I transferred to being a professor. And I had 3 children along the way. So what I just realized today, which I hadn't realized before, is my first child was as a grad student, my second was in industry, and my third was in academia as a professor. So I have the experience of having children in all different ways. Um, and the one piece of advice I can give for anybody who hasn't done it yet, just in general, is there's no good time. You just do it. So I actually have 3 jobs at MIT. I'm also the program manager for the Center for Enhanced Nanofluidic Transport, which is a DOE-funded center, and I'm also the associate director for graduate programs at MIT Energy Initiative. So I have many hats, and then of course I have my volunteer work with Mass AWIS, and I started the leadership program for Mass AWIS with Cheryl and Haifa a couple years ago. So that's sort of an overview.
Well, I appreciate the overview, Dr. Rigos. Thank you for joining us today. And Natalya, please, thank you for joining us. We have Natalya Spicker. She's the Vice President of SheWorks. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thank you so much, Edie. It's a great pleasure to be here alongside yourself, Dr. Rigos, and everyone that's joining us today. A little bit about myself. Well, I'm originally from Colombia, Cartagena to be exact. So I have a Colombian heart, but I've been living in the United States most of my life. I came to the United States as a tennis player where I was in Alabama. Very interesting place to live, but I was there for 8 years. I fell in love with the culture. My career got started within procurement and supply chain for a coal mining company. And well, life just took me in a very interesting redirect when I started falling in love with the creative services world, where I was in for 8 years. From there, as a freelancer, I really dealt with a lot of the things that we're actually going to be covering today, but I dealt with a lot of the headaches that freelancers have in terms of getting matched to the right opportunities. And that led me to a 7-year career with Robert Half International, where I became a talent and staffing professional. So I fell in love with the world of not just staffing, but also the world of understanding talent and helping them bridge any gaps. So that's, I believe, why I'm here today, but also more importantly, I shifted from Robert Half into SheWorks, which you mentioned. And as the name explains, we are geared to bridging the gaps between women and employment worldwide. So I'm really excited to share with you guys how we're doing that and how we can suggest that for the life sciences audience. So very honored to be here. And while I don't have children just yet, I do know a lot of women that have been struggling with finding that work-life balance. So I'm so excited to be able to give you guys a few tips and techniques on how to reach that balance before thinking about leaving the workforce. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you. My first question is going to be for Dr. Rigos. We don't have an exact figure of women who have left STEM, but why are some of the reasons women in STEM leave?
Okay, thank you. That is a really great question, and if we had the full answer, we wouldn't be in this dilemma right now. I think one of the big problems is we really don't have enough data about why women leave science, and particularly now with COVID. So we need to make sure that we do collect data, because that data is critical. But as you all know, the pipeline has been leaking for a long time, and COVID is just going to be another hole in the pipeline. And what you realize when you have a stressful situation like COVID is that there are cracks in the system, and the balance between making things work as a working mom and not is very, very sensitive. So something like COVID can tip and make something that was barely manageable be unmanageable. So I think the most important thing is for employers to be flexible with their employees and to support them in all ways. And I work for MIT right now, and MIT has been amazing during COVID. They have given people with children additional daycare funding so that they can afford these new situations, and they allow flexible working hours. And I think that is a very important part of dealing with a crisis like this.
Well, and regarding this crisis, why do their exit mean so much in the already abysmal representation of women in leadership and science? And does this mean it will get worse?
Well, I hope it doesn't get worse. That's my hope. But basically, we don't know at what level these women are who are leaving science. We don't know which part of the workplace they're at. But my guess is, since women are putting off having children till their 30s, they're probably in their 30s, and therefore they have already established themselves in their career, and so they're somewhere in the middle of the career ladder. And so the problem is that if they are, at that level, there are two things that happen. They will lose their spot in the hierarchy, and if and when they return, they will have lost ground, and also therefore power, seniority, all that stuff. And then the second problem is that the women that they were mentoring or managing will lose their mentors and managers, as well as, in a way, the ideal that they had that this could all work for them too, because they see somebody who has to step away because they can't manage all of those forces. And so that's a little bit depressing, for the women who haven't left. And so we really need to pay attention to that and try to keep them supported again.
Now, Natalya, Dr. Rigos went over with us some of the issues and some of the long-term ramifications and consequences. How can companies adapt to this new normal to meet the needs of working families and still maintain a competitive advantage?
Absolutely. And I think some of the information Dr. Rigo shared is very on point. I believe that it has to be an internal shift. And I think Dr. Rigo's mentioned supporting an extra budget for daycare activities, really being cognizant of the fact that there is a struggle beyond just, the stress of what this pandemic has caused in each of us, but also just an understanding as a woman, as a mom, or as any other hat that they might be wearing, really to show an initiative that really comprises a solution. Beyond that, I think that it also is showing an initiative that they have some type of program that is geared towards diversity and inclusion, and some type of program that is geared towards the retention of these women, not just in supporting them in their day-to-day activities while at home, but also making sure that they're providing some sort of, whether it's an not employability boost, but like a retention boost, or, hey, there's a skill set you want to develop, we're here to help and educate and train you. Something I've seen on my side since I've joined SheWorks is just a huge initiative worldwide of companies trying to come up with programs and training so that their folks don't leave, but also that they feel included and really partnered with a company that wants to see them grow. So I think that really the inclusion of these programs is going to help them not just keep their amazing workers, which in my opinion is the biggest asset of a company, but also have a competitive advantage in retaining them and making sure that their skill sets are brought up to speed with their needs, but really exploring who needs the most help and opening the doors for that is the way forward. There's a few other things, but for the essence of respecting everybody's time, I do want to focus on those as my highlights.
And Natalya, please feel free to enter any type of insight, information, any advice you like to share into the chat section so we can go back and take a look at it when we have time later in the day. So please don't hesitate to share anything that can help us.
I will do that, absolutely.
And if you don't also mind me asking, since we're talking about sharing in this virtual world, should women, no matter their background, career interests, be thinking more about how to raise their profiles and how to work via social media?
For sure. I think social media and the ability to position yourself, rebrand, market yourself, and connect with others has become not just a cool tool, it's become almost vital. I said the other day, I think it's comparing to not having a cell phone nowadays. It's that vital. So to anyone here that isn't active on platforms like LinkedIn or even through meetup groups like meetup.com, I highly encourage you to start with whether it's just revamping your LinkedIn profile. But one of the things that I've noticed is LinkedIn has become that it's almost like replaced what coffee shops and networking events and bars used to be pre-COVID, and now has allowed us to not just have a platform to connect with others, but also a very specific platform. So social media has become an amazing vehicle. And another thing I realized in the last 6 months of my employment at Robert Half was that most managers and mentors and peers that could potentially be a great connection for someone seeking flexible employment or seeking a new type of way to engage within the pandemic, these folks are really open to having a conversation. And Dr. Rigos mentioned people losing their mentor or a manager. And I think that with a little bit of research and a plan, platforms and social media can allow such great connections to people that could potentially become your next employer, or could potentially show you how to build a roadmap to a more flexible work solution. So if you haven't already, please go into your LinkedIn profile, dust it off, update your work information. For recruiters that are actively looking for people like yourself, they're looking at LinkedIn as one of their primary talent pool and talent network platforms. So, obviously the most recent information that you can provide, the better chances you would have to be able to play in this new field digitally.
Great. And how did we get here? Dr. Rigos, if you can just shed some light or your insight on how the structural inequities surrounding women and advancement and our ability to succeed in the workplace, how is it exacerbated? I mean, we have to think about the pandemic. Now we're in a virtual world. What else can we prepare for, should be preparing for?
Okay, so I was thinking about the structural inequities that we're already facing, and how do we get rid of them slowly, but also not lose ground because of this loss. So I think there are three main inequities.
Okay.
One, there's the unconscious bias that women face in the workplace because men often feel that they are not as committed or not as capable as their male counterparts. And so the departure of women, if it's due to COVID, will sort of reinforce that bias. They'll think, oh, she wasn't that committed to her work, she couldn't handle it, so she quit. And that's gonna affect even the women who did not quit, right?
Right.
Then there's the issue of critical mass, which is, I think, very important and not really discussed very much. In many departments or teams, we finally have a critical mass of, you want to have like 30% women at least to sort of have, them be able to support each other. And so if you lose women, once you've achieved critical mass, now you go back to the situation where you don't have critical mass again. And so you're not going to be heard at the table. You're not going to have the support that you need whenever you need it. And then the third thing is, if these women are forced to take time off, their accomplishments, they're not going to be able to do that project or, take that task on. And so their resume compared to somebody, a man who stayed in the workplace is going to look like, it's going to look inferior. So how do we overcome that? Because in a way, they should be able to count the time that we spend doing other things, because we are actually getting experience. So one of the great books that I just finished reading that I told people about is called Invisible Women. And so the female perspective, if you're a farmer or if you're a nurse or whatever you do, is really important. And even if you're not an expert in whatever business field it is, you always bring something to the table from that other side. And I don't think the workplace values that enough.
Wow, well, we're actually at 2:23. So right now we're going to open up the mics, video, audio. We want people to participate, engage, ask questions. In the interim, I'm going to ask our attendees to participate and share how their company is adjusting and adapting and being creative and being innovative about addressing some of these issues. And while we're doing that and our attendees and participants are thinking about what their companies are doing, Natalya, I have a question in regards to what both you and Dr. Rigos was talking about. What do you put out on LinkedIn to say I'm looking for either a mentor, or how do you suggest doing that if you've never done that before?
So there are a couple of ways, some more organic than others. I know LinkedIn right now allows you to select your profile picture to say, I'm looking for opportunities. So in terms of looking for opportunities, that's one way to do it. I don't believe they have a function yet, they should, of people who are open for mentorship. From my experience, I think LinkedIn, there's a little bit of input that you have to put in and energy that you have to put into creating consistent content. And that content within itself opens up doors for people to constantly look at your profile for information, whether it's expertise or stats you want to share or opinions about something. So remember, your LinkedIn is your home to share whatever you like. In terms of seeking mentors, I think just asking honestly, saying, hey, does anyone know a great mentor or a great coach in this specific side of whatever industry? I know that I have recommended a lot of people and actually found my own coaches from LinkedIn, from just having a conversation about a comment that was made and me checking out their profile. So I do feel like there's no one way to do it. I think it's more of whenever that person is ready to have a mentor in their life, because I believe it's, there is a right time for that. And you have to be mentally prepared, because it's a lot of, willing to bite your tongue in certain things and accept certain things that can be done better. Once that time is reached, I think that with the right involvement on LinkedIn is my platform of choice. But let's just say social media for that matter, with the right involvement and interaction with key individuals and asking that question directly, you will be able to find someone. And if all else fails, I believe that there are a lot of groups and trade organizations, such as MassBio, for example, that, people might feel more comfortable within because it's part of their industry or they may have a contact there. Reaching out to those folks or reaching out to people that could know of other mentors that are specific within the industry. And I know a lot of these have opened up the doors to be approached virtually. So I do recommend going out, if you want to go outside LinkedIn as a platform, to reach out to these groups, because, and you can attest to this, Edie, I know that there are a number of them in not just, in Boston, but nationwide, worldwide.
Well, thank you. I have a question for you both from Stephanie Brown. Are there things our employee resource networks or women groups can be doing to help this issue within our companies? Would either one of you like to take a stab at that?
The answer is there's a lot of things. Dr. Rigos, would you like to take a stab, or would you like me to go for it?
You can go for it, and if you miss something, I'll add to it.
Okay, wonderful. So I think here it's, like I said, there's so many things and so many places you can start. I feel that for women's groups, there are a lot of companies and groups, and including ours, that are doing so many things, and they've been doing them for so many years, that I think the important question to ask yourself is, what do you want to achieve, and what do you want to start with? So once that's planned out, you can then pick what partner makes sense. And I say the word partner is a key word because partnerships in this facet, specifically with women groups, are essential, because they've done research, they know, they have different channels, they have their own networks that can support this. So I think having a clear vision of what you would like to achieve within your employee research network, whether that's increasing the amount of female applicants, whether that's making your female employees more ready, more future ready, as we say here at SheWorks, meaning they're more digitally savvy, they have the soft skills to engage in a remote work environment if that shift is going in that direction. So depending on all of that, I would say pick a partner that really resonates with your vision and has the track record, the proven track record to say, hey, we've done it for companies like yourself, or we've done it for this industry. Here's what we suggest, because this is something that we cannot do alone. We cannot solve this problem by ourselves. And I'll stop it there to see what Dr. Rigos has to add, but I would say have a plan and find a partner that can really nurture that plan alongside you.
That's a great start, Natalia. I mean, there's just so much to say, but I think one of the things that we don't do enough of is just have the conversation. I was just on a call this morning about, I'm part of MIT Energy Initiative, and we don't have anything specific to women. So we just are partnering now with Columbia University, and they have a Women in Energy initiative. And it just blew my mind when I thought about it, that, you know, we haven't ever talked about women-specific things in energy. We try to get a speaker who's a woman and sort of balance it out and not just have male speakers, but we don't really have anything specific for grad students. So I think having a conversation in the company is a really important thing. And the other thing is finding allies. I think allies up and down the management, you know, up and down, not just up, but we need to have these conversations and create alliances so that we can support things when they come up, rather than be surprised and then not really be supportive when we have an opportunity for change. We need to be ready. And as soon as the opportunity, so COVID is a great example, because of COVID, a lot of things are changing. And so we have the opportunity to change things in a way that will be better for women and sort of leapfrog in a way that we couldn't when things were normal. So we should take advantage of that.
Thank you. We have a question from Adama. Great advice. Thank you both. Given the disproportionate representation of minority women in senior roles, what specific advice can be offered to reduce the workforce in this population group to address inequities?
So in my opinion, I think, and can you, Adama, can you rephrase the offer to reduce the workforce? Do you mean that offer to reduce the amount of people that are in this, you know, misrepresented, or I guess small side of of that specific talent pool? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, hi there. So just to kind of clarify, I think there's been a lot of reports from McKinsey around women's representation at senior level, especially up to the board level. And obviously that's a gradual progression that has to be maintained. If women choose to leave the workforce, as they obviously, as you described, you know, they lose their tenure, they lose that history, they don't have the right mentorship and sponsorships. That, you know, increases the gap that we've been trying to address for many years. And so my concern is, when you look at those reports, that the lowest level that is the most affected by that gap is minority women, which is African Americans, then Hispanics. And I think that's a big concern, because we can target women in general, but I think as you said, COVID is actually creating a situation where cracks in the system are magnified. So my great fear is we're going to go back to the 70s if we're not careful, basically, or even the 50s if we're not careful, right. You know, especially with the way that the world is so unequal, you know, to start with. And so I wonder, is there anything that specific groups of women in those racial profiles could actually understand? Because they need to understand that this isn't just a decision that affects today, it's a decision that affects their daughters and everybody else that is around them who look like them. So I wonder if there's any advice maybe we could discuss, or in your experience that you could maybe share with us.
Sure. So there's many ways to answer this question. I will start with something you highlighted with which is we are responsible, and women in minority groups, I am one of them. We are responsible for understanding our role in this, and understanding that, yes, in some cases our companies may not promote or support our inclusion in higher levels. So that begs the decision on our part to say, am I in the right place? Because I am very apt for this particular level or this particular role, but whether there's a glass ceiling or whether there's just some kind of issue that's keeping me from that, whatever that may be, am I in the right place to go and shine? And what I've seen is, coming from corporate America into the startup world, because SheWorks is a startup, I've seen that there are so many startups and so many companies that are very much a fan of inclusion of minorities within higher level roles. So I almost want to ask, would it be a question of shifting into something that will put that person and her expertise in the right channel to reach that position one day? Or do we focus our efforts in really trying to change the fabric of that company's specific culture, or in general of companies' understanding of those specific roadblocks? And I think with time, and this is another thing I wanted to add, with time, I think we as women have to become that force of nature, become that drive, and partner with the right companies that will promote us into those right roles. Because once we can impact that number. It may not be within the companies that where these women are right now, but maybe in different positions or creating companies that are more inclusive, whatever the case might be. There's several ways to do it, but it's almost like we are responsible for boosting that number somehow. And once we boost that number somehow, companies will pay attention. But we almost have to create a little bit of noise with raising the inclusion of minorities within specific roles so that companies can pay attention. And some of the things that I've noticed is that companies that are embracing remote work are seeing increases in productivity up to 40%. Companies that are helping bridge the gap between women and unemployment, and obviously I'm sure this applies to minorities, have seen so much support, financial support from groups, from organizations, from governments in that. So once we create the noise, and it sometimes has to be outside of these companies will pay attention because they'll see success in other areas. I know that may not answer the question directly, but I think the short answer is we have to take it upon ourselves to figure out how to increase that number and then be that example so that companies can pay attention. Until then, you're right, we might as well, evolve backwards to what the 70s were, and we really want to avoid that at all costs.
Oh, thank you, Natalya. We actually have another question kind of related to that from Elaine.
Hi. We have a very generous parental leave policy, both for men and women. And one of the things that I've observed is that men at our company will take a week or two and then come back to work. Women take the 10 weeks of leave, they just gave birth. And there seems to be even an expectation that during that time period, they would be responding to emails. It's something I've been thinking about and wondering if it's something we should try to enforce the men taking of the leave, or how do we address that? Because that's another inequity of becoming a parent.
So I'd like to answer that just because I just read about it in this book, Invisible Women. She gives data that basically everything changed when the company required both men and women to take the leave. Basically, they couldn't not take the leave. So that was a real game changer. I don't remember the details of, which companies, and I believe it was in the UK, but it was really eye-opening that if a company does force everybody to take it, the playing field is more equal.
Agreed. So, I'm actually looking up the book that you recommended, Dr. Rigos, and making sure that I have the correct title: Invisible Women, Data Bias and a World Designed for Men.
Yeah, that's the one, by Carolyn Perez.
Carolyn Perez.
It's an amazing book. I just think we should all read that because it'll change our perspectives. And also, what's really important about this book is that it shows you how policies matter and how data matters. We're not collecting all the data. And if you read this book, you realize how much data we're not collecting that's gender specific and how we really need to fix that problem in order to make progress. And I think that would be certainly true, good answer for the previous question for Adama, that, you know, the more data we have, the more we can fix things.
And let's continue the discussion. We need our male allies. So if it's any male allies on here that would like to chime in and talk about ways that they can support women and keeping the discussion open and not just thinking about it as supporting women, it's supporting families and it's supporting a company. I personally do feel that parental leave should be mandatory for men, because when you look at two candidates, you will see both candidates the same way. You won't look at one person, a woman who's in her 30s and like, oh my gosh, she's gonna probably take time off to have kids and have a family. You're gonna look at this guy the exact same way. And Stephanie, Ross, do you have a question? We'll come back to Stephanie. We have a question in regards to how can we better support single working women who bear the sole burden of childcare during this pandemic?
Well, I think that is the most difficult situation to be in, are the single working moms. And this is where, you know, companies, you know, having on-site daycare, for example, or free daycare for all working moms, you know, some countries have that, and you can read about what amazing effects there are on the lives of women, because the stress of having to get there to pick up your child before the daycare closes. I've done that for many, many years with my children. You know, it's a huge stressor. Or what do you do when they're sick? Right? There's just so many things. At least I feel that COVID has shown us that if your child is sick, you can work from home, that will be an acceptable thing, and you don't need to take the day off. You can just work from home and be with your child when they're sick. So I think there's a lot that we can do on that.
And someone just sent a note about some things that their company is looking at and working on, more flexibility in the work week, open to remote and in-person hybrid futures, reducing business travel for employees, and they're looking at more constructive and innovative ways around sponsorship programs and incorporating succession planning. Thank you for sharing that. Kristen Roosevelt, thank you for joining us. Did you have a comment? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. My daughter's sitting next to me and she's laughing at me because I didn't have my volume on. I've been on the whole time, Edie, and I've been bouncing around my house because, you know, obviously the commentary of being a working parent, and I just had to chime in about the single parent because, you know, Edie, you know, I've been a single mom for 9 years, and my kids are 10, 12, and 14, and I've worked for Thermo Fisher Scientific for 21 years. And I just wanted to really echo a comment that I think Natalya made earlier around the importance of having mentors. You know, I've been fortunate to work for the same company for 21 years. And I would say, you know, the way that I survive being a single working mom, 3 kids at 3 different schools during COVID, is because of my mentors and my management team. And I've been very blessed to have excellent mentors during my career at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I've always worked from home, but it definitely, you know, the comments that Angeliki, you've made, like COVID is at my tipping point. Like I'm holding on, I'm surviving, but you know, you have your routine and you have, this is how it's done. And COVID really has been a test, but yeah, so I guess I just wanted to comment, Edie, more so than anything around the mentor, you know, banding together to have a good team. You know, our company has adjusted, quite surprisingly, being a large corporation. We just had a call last week around the different HR type benefits that they're providing. A lot of it is around enhanced childcare, both for people that work on-site in an office, but also remote types of benefits. And I'm trying to look at the different names of these companies because I took a bunch of notes. Bright Horizons was one of the organizations that we've partnered with, but really, I think it's the mentor piece is really critical to help navigate these really challenging situations. People that believe in you and know that you'll still get your job done no matter what, right?
Well, thank you, Kristen, for sharing that. And you know that you have a supporter in me. And we're actually coming up on the last few minutes. So the last question is going to be for Natalya. What are some of the other options that women have in regards to leaving the workforce in an economy? And what does possibly the gig economy look like for women scientists?
So that's an excellent question, and I'll try to answer that as succinctly as I can. The options, the first option is really, and Dr. Rigos said it earlier, sometimes women are afraid of losing their footing and losing their professional footing within an organization when they take mat leave. But something that we never lose is our expertise and our knowledge, and specifically the things that we have learned throughout our professional career. One of the things that I suggest the most, and I've noticed this about a lot of candidates when I was a recruiter at Robert Half, is that there are some wonderful consultants out there that don't even realize that they can be wonderful consultants. And I think that I'll touch on the gig economy in a second, but I think the world is gravitating to a more consultative approach, and businesses are really understanding not just the cost and time savings behind embracing a more gig economy type of environment for workers, but they're also seeing that they have access to some of the world's best talent through this. So that being said, because we're seeing a shift in that direction, I would say really consider becoming a consultant. I know it's easier said than done, but a lot of times people realize that when they hear the term consultant, they get scared. They're like, well, I need to start my own company and I need to do all these things. And yes, there's some involvement that you need to have and planning and getting organized. But once you realize that it's quite easy if you have a pattern to follow or a mentor or someone that's done it before you and pioneered it, you'll realize that it allows you to keep your expertise, to have the flexibility that you want, to be able to pave the way in a way for your own professional career that you can dictate which companies you work for, what projects you work on, how you want to position yourself in the market as an expert. So a way to do that, and just to even get started or test the waters, start sharing content about your expertise. Again, within I would say within reason. If there are any NDAs that you have to follow, be very careful. But what I noticed is that people on LinkedIn are just starting to share their expertise, and by opening up that world to people are either starting to hire them as consultants, they're starting to refer back to them. Anybody that might be in need of that type of consultant. So I go back to LinkedIn because it's a great expander. I would also say with the rise of the gig economy, there is the rise of talent platforms that are geared for consultants. So if you've ever thought about this or want to engage in that type of scenario, check out any talent platform that is within your industry. I recommend SheWorks. SheWorks is really mainly guided towards the digital programming, development of websites, marketing. But again, all of these could potentially touch on any type of company within life sciences that has that department. But beyond that, there is a myriad of talent platforms that can connect people with freelance opportunities, with consulting opportunities. And to speak to the gig economy, as you guys can imagine and deduce, it means short-term projects or ad hoc projects that can be done for a variety of clients. And a lot of scientists particularly are showing, I actually even did some research, over 50% of scientists are saying that they're open to this. And actually Forbes said that 50% of companies will actually be remote by the end of 2020. So that's a large number. So consider the fact that these things are trending in that direction. And I would say if you can figure out a way to position yourself, that's, as an expert within that industry, it's definitely an option. It's not the end all be all. Some people are not open to that. But I would say beyond that, just connect with your communities, connect with organizations, the things that you're passionate about, explore those, because there's a chance that there is a giant network of people or women or men and women that are in dire need of someone like yourself, or know some other network that could connect you. So I would say the key words here are partnership, connection, and leveraging your expertise. I hope that helps shine a light, but there's so many ways, and I'm obviously here to help guide anybody on this call in terms of being connected or how to explore that. So just know that this call is planting a seed for sure, but I'm here as an expert to help you guys at least explore that further if you have that need to do that one-on-one.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Natalya. And last parting words I'll leave for Dr. Rigos. What is one more important thing that we should know from you today?
I'd say that we women are amazing. I put it in the chat. We can multitask better than anybody else. And so I think we should not forget that. We sometimes feel like, you know, we're not as good, but we actually are better at so many different things. And again, this is where I found a great encouragement by reading this book that has all this data about women. You realize, wow, if you look at the data, we are amazing. And so we just need to support each other more. And that's, I think, the biggest disappointment is oftentimes women do not support other women. And I think we need to, you know, do that, especially during difficult times. So actually, I should put my email in the chat, or do you already have it for them?
If actually, since we're going to wrap up now, if you would be so kind to, and if you both would be so kind to enter your contact information or how people can follow up with you into the chat section, that would be great. I'd like to thank you both for being here and for sharing your insight and expertise. I'd also like to thank everyone here for being attentive and participating. Again, they're going to enter their contact information, and now do not hesitate, click on it. Follow up with them, send them a note right now so you don't forget. I would also like to thank Ironwood Pharmaceuticals for their support and upcoming programs that you may be interested in. As you may be aware, November is National Veterans and Military Month. Please join us with Life Sciences Veterans Action Network on November 10th. We will also be hosting with the United Negro College Fund, Historically Black Colleges and Universities, Massachusetts Life Sciences Virtual Summit on November 11th. And some of you I will definitely see on November 12th for the MassBio Patient Advocacy Summit. And for all of our upcoming events, please visit massbio.org/events. Have a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing everyone soon. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Edie, Dr. Rigos. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you for being
Natalia.
here.
Edie.